Freshly showered, so let's get our hands dirty again. The question of the questions. Combat sports versus traditional martial arts. A lot of martial arts creators, and I include myself here, that this question doesn't lead to something productive in the outcome. Today we're gonna watch a video from a combat sports athlete, and as a matter of fact, he has also been in one of my videos, so shout out to you, Armchair Violence. Hope you're doing good over there, on what the real difference between combat sports on one side and traditional martial arts on the other hand side are. So without further hesitation, let's jump right into the video, shall we?
The combat sports community, myself included, constantly talk about the differences between traditional martial arts and combat sports, as if they are separate, irreconcilable things. But even 5 minutes of research into martial arts tells you that that's not even remotely true. Combat sports have traditional elements, and many of them are even older than the arts that we label traditional. It seems like there's a lot of overlap between these categories, yet the arts on both sides often scoff at each other. So is the distinction meaningless? Can an art be both a sport and traditional? Well, yes, of course it can. But that's not really what we're talking about when we refer to traditional martial arts.
What do we refer to when we say traditional martial arts? So I would say, as a traditional martial artist myself, a traditional martial arts obviously has a tradition. So you have a clear outline on where it comes from, where it has been passed down, to whom it has been passed down, and what were the teaching methods. Those, in my experience or in my knowledge, are outlines how you can see a traditional martial art. And of course, when you talk about tradition, we also talk about time. So a traditional martial art needs to be evolved over time. There are a lot of frauds in especially the Kung Fu community who claim themselves to be traditional, yet they are the head of the style, and they are the only head, because it's pretty easy. You go to a dojo or a gym or a kwon, whatever you call it in your style, then you separate ways, and now you open your own dojo and you become the leader of that style because you invented the style. Doesn't mean that you are good at it, doesn't mean that you are proficient. No, it just means that you are the head of this style now because it's your own style. You created it. We need to have this in mind when we see martial arts online.
I would argue that they are actually distinctly different categories of martial arts with very little overlap. However, the labels we've given them are entirely unhelpful and don't properly convey the meaning that anyone intends. Instead of discussing the dichotomy between traditional martial arts and combat sports, we should be talking about process-oriented arts and results-oriented arts. Not only do these labels actually convey the intended meaning, but they can also teach us a lot about how the standards by which an art is judged can have a massive effect on its future development. So, let's break down what these terms mean and why it really matters. Broadly speaking, a process-oriented approach does not focus on the result itself, but instead focuses on perfecting each step of a process that goes into that result. People that work in air travel, banking, or government organizations often need to have a process-oriented mindset to do their job safely and effectively. They need to follow a strict set of instructions to avoid mistakes and ethical lapses. This method is common in industries with complex moving parts, where no one person can be expected to understand or direct the whole, or in industries with ethical or security concerns. Cooperative endeavors in which you are a cog in a larger machine tend to be process-oriented. As an example, think about driving. Driving is not about getting to your destination efficiently. It's about getting there safely and reliably. It's about following the directions to your destination and making predictable actions that obey the rules of the road so that other drivers can navigate around you. Any driver that decides to innovate an unexplored, faster route to their destination is probably going to crash and never make it there.
Guys, don't worry, I know a shortcut.
Whenever enough people have to work in concert with each other, following the process starts to become more important than innovation and creativity. On the other hand, a results-oriented approach really only cares about the desired end state. A variety of methods and strategies are acceptable or even necessary in order to achieve this goal. These approaches are often better in things like sales, software development, and many service industries where different needs can be met in a variety of ways and where flexibility and creativity are desirable. This approach can lead to a higher level of innovation and constantly improving processes. However, it can only be used when maintaining predictable and cooperative links in a complex chain isn't a concern. Now, if you still don't understand the distinction, let me give you a true story that might help. In 5th grade, I took a math test. On this test, I got every single answer correct, but I didn't show my work. My teacher gave me an F because she couldn't see how I got the answers. From a results-oriented perspective, I got all the questions right, which is great. But from a process-oriented perspective, I didn't follow the instructions, so I failed. I wasn't being judged on what answers I got. I was being judged on how I got them.
I give you my 2 cents here. So another good example, as I think, is I give you another example. Process-oriented management and results-based management. Think about a teacher, as he said, in 5th grade. What they care about is teaching the student or the kids how to get to results. It doesn't matter that much if the results are correct or wrong, because you don't want to get the child to a correct or wrong approach, because they need to start or learn how to think themselves and not just cheat from the neighbor, right? On the other hand side, result-based is something that I do in my daily job as a project leader in engineering. I got my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the university, and now I work in the industry. So what my employer cares about is if I'm making those sales, if I'm making the products go to the customer, and if the customer is happy or not. If the customer is not happy, then he isn't coming back. He's not coming for the spare parts, he doesn't order a service, whatever. So that means that I don't make the revenue for the company, and because of that, the company cannot pay my salary. This is exactly what he's talking about. That is results oriented. I need to make those figures because by the end of the month, the balance needs to be taken into account. Because if not, then the employer cannot pay my salary and I lose my job. On the other hand side, a teacher in 5th grade is employed by the government. Whether or not their students are failing or passing their exams at the end of the month, he or she will have the job anyway. For sure, it should be a teacher's approach to have good, reliable outcomes in terms of good grades, for sure. But it is not about the result primarily. It's about the process that kids learn how to learn. That's, in my opinion, what a school needs to be teaching. If that's the case, that stands on a piece of paper, right?
When you throw a punch, are you focusing on having good form, posture, and alignment, or are you just focusing on safely landing the hit? The former example is a process-oriented approach, focusing on the individual steps involved in the action. And the latter is results-oriented, focusing solely on the desired end state. When combat sports practitioners criticize traditional martial arts, we're really criticizing process-oriented arts.
I think what combat sports athletes really critique is not entirely the process-oriented arts, because when you don't think about the process, then your outcome is going to be shit. But I think what they critiquing is process-oriented without the result. What is the result in this example? Sparring, landing the punch, pulling off the technique.
But why does this divide exist? Why are traditional martial arts process-oriented while combat sports are results-oriented?
Man, I have so much to say here. So why are traditional martial arts more process-oriented than combat sports? Let's think about what traditional martial artists generally are. Generally, a traditional martial art, if it's not some bullcrap out there, it is an art that has evolved over a couple of centuries. So it has been there for a long time. When it has been there for a long time, people figured out certain things, which kind of punches do make sense, how you align the punches, how is your body mechanics, do not get hurt in the long term. Because the goal of traditional martial arts is to study it a lifelong time, to practice maybe not this exact martial art, but devoting your life to learning more and more and more. And if you do this without the process-oriented thinking of having good body structure, having good alignment, don't overdo things, you're going to get hurt. What does injuries lead to? Exactly, you stop training. And you don't want that, because when you don't train, you don't necessarily learn more.
Well, it all comes down to how you answer a simple question. How do you know if you're good at your martial art? In combat sports, it's pretty simple. Are you winning? If you're beating up world champions, then you're very good at it.
Exactly, and it also doesn't matter if you get injured or not after the fight, or you have CTE, which we discussed or we saw in the last Sunday documentary React. If you are interested in this, then watch this video here on the card. It is really crazy what is going on in the mixed martial arts and in the UFC, really.
Good results at a high level, then you're doing the art correctly. However, Not all martial arts have those kinds of competitions. And when your martial art doesn't even spar, how do you know when you're good at it?
When your martial art doesn't spar, then I'd be 100% clear and rough here. You're never going to be good at fighting. Don't care what you say. We can argue in the comments. You're never going to be good at fighting if you don't train actually how to fight.
If there are no results, then by what metric are you judged? Well, the predominant answer is to instead ask whether you're doing the moves correctly. Did it work gets replaced with, did you do it with proper form? It's no longer a question of whether your tactics and strategies are effective, and it's instead a question of whether you did the right moves the right way in the right order. Essentially, are you correctly following the process?
So what I get from this distinction is we see on the one side traditional martial arts who do forms. On the other side, we see combat sports that do fighting. This is the process-oriented that he has been talking about. And I don't think that is entirely true. Yes, traditional martial arts often do have a lot of form training. Forms, kata, taolu, whatever it is called in your style, but it's not all of it. For sure, there are also like the wushu tournaments, the sports wushu. This is then primarily what he is talking about. 100% agree. But it's not all of traditional martial arts. And I want to make this clear here that it is not all. And if you are interested in seeing how we spar, then I have a full playlist for you that you can watch. I'm not a good fighter, and I also don't need to be a UFC fighter winning world championships. I want to come across with the message that it is not all that traditional martial arts do. Some do, yes. Maybe they're not honest about what they are selling as a product. If it's self-defense, if you become a good fighter and they don't spar, then it's just bullcrap and it's false advertising, and that should be spoken about. But on the other hand, there are also schools, and I can be very lucky that I have the chance to be in such a school where we spar. We have regular weekly fight trainings, which is basically 15 minutes warm-up, then maybe 15 minutes of a little bit technique work with a partner, and then it's 1 hour of free fighting. Everybody fights with everybody, also with the instructor, and you learn together. This is what, in my opinion, traditional martial arts are about. And I think we have lost this. I don't know when we have lost this, but I think the perception of the people or the viewer is they just want to see beautiful forms, beautiful kung fu forms, and people who look like Chinese people wearing this robe portraying a Shaolin monk. This is what the people want to see, because I see it also on my Instagram that those videos where I show forms, they resonate pretty good with the audience. It gets spread across, it gets shared from other platforms. But when I talk about how to build up your body to be stronger, a stronger athlete, a stronger martial artist, how to get more flexible, what you can do outside of your forms training, the views drop because people don't want to hear this. But it is the truth that you need those things.
And the difference between these two approaches is not trivial. A process-oriented art encourages its practitioners to perform specific moves in specific ways. The goal, if you will, is to achieve a certain aesthetic, comfort, enjoyment, mindset, or something, not to use it for a purpose and then be finished.
I don't say that this kind of training is not justified. It is justified if you're exactly searching for this. If you want to have some stuff that you can show to your friends, that you can do on your own, you find the beauty in the movement. So for example, let's talk about Tai Chi, and do it to a very high level of age. And you do it in the park, you do it with your friends, and you stay active. Man, perfectly fine, perfectly fine. Please go on and do this. But don't expect to be a fighter when doing those moves. That's not how it's going to work.
The entire point of a process-oriented approach is to prevent people from creating novel solutions to problems. It serves to constrain human behavior. In some industries, that's a very necessary thing. However, in martial arts, all this does is completely stifle innovation and prevent students from learning the kind of problem solving that they need in an actual fight. Many professions lend themselves to one approach or the other, and martial arts is no exception. In terms of becoming an effective fighter, a results-oriented approach is the clear and indisputable answer.
If this is the only thing that you care about, then yeah, I would say 100%. Go kickboxing, go BJJ, go to an MMA gym where you have maybe certain other styles. If that's your goal, to become the champion of the UFC, don't take up Kung Fu. No, don't make it your main thing. Then you're maybe not getting the result that you wanted to get out. But is it then the problem of the art? Or is it maybe you to blame because you had a false perception of the art and what it's going to learn? What we like to do is blame it on the art to not have the blame on us, because always taking the blame on myself that I have made the fault, it's really a hard way of accepting that things didn't come out as we wanted. And we shouldn't do that.
That means that every new fight represents a unique matchup of body types and personalities. The arts that are going to be successful are the ones that teach students to creatively strive towards a definitive goal. This is the real reason that combat sports succeed. It's not because they're less traditional, it's because they're results-oriented. And this distinction is not only important in judging different martial arts, it's also critical in understanding gym culture and in your own personal development. Within martial arts, becoming process-oriented is actually an easy trap to fall into. It's a way to measure your progress without the stress of sparring or competition.
100%
And it's
agree.
also a much easier way for the instructor to teach. Having a results-oriented gym culture means that each student is likely going to have a different style. When every student is doing a different thing, teaching and correcting them becomes very difficult. The instructor now has to do constant, complex problem solving in order to help each student advance. However, when you're teaching them a specific process, you don't have to do all that. Nitpicking students on their form is an easy way to make yourself seem smart. And fostering a process-oriented gym culture means that students are more likely to closely follow your instructions, which can make you feel like a god. But in a results-oriented
Martial arts
culture,
cults.
students will
Oh dear.
constantly be modifying the drills and going off script in an attempt to innovate. And if you're a coach with a very fragile ego, which is all too common, then you're not going to like that at all. Likewise, a process-oriented approach is also a trap that students can put themselves in. Attempting to get a certain result in live sparring is really hard. You have to problem solve and strategize while being punched in the face. However, attempting to follow the same rote process is cognitively much easier, meaning that in many ways, it's less stressful to continually throw the same unsuccessful combo over and over than it is to actually find a way to win. Even when they're getting beat up, they can still tell themselves that they're doing the moves with better form, so they're actually better than the person constantly hitting their face.
What you make then out of this, that depends on your personality and what you want from martial arts. And if you don't want to learn how to fight, you can go down this route. And if you want to learn how to fight, then that's maybe just a cheap excuse. Sorry. Because that's also a really important difference between traditional martial arts and combat sports. In a good traditional martial arts school, you cannot be an asshole. You will not get over the belts or in the hierarchy of the school if it's a good martial arts school that teaches all the things, character development, health, spirit, fighting, everything. But you can be a pro UFC fighter and be the biggest dickhead in the world. Because we have also heard about instances where mixed martial arts fighters were not allowed to get in the UFC because the UFC couldn't market them. They were not outspeaking enough. They were not like this Conor McGregor's or these Khabib's, where they have like these stories and this unique selling point that you need in such events. Doesn't mean that this is the only thing, but it's also something that I think we need to take into account when talking about these differences.
Instead of figuring out what the new guy is doing and learning from that, some people's egos can tempt them into dismissing the new guy altogether. Fighting is a zero-sum competitive activity that encourages innovation and rewards unpredictability. Because of this, a results-oriented approach is simply better. However, this approach can also be very challenging and has the tendency to shatter egos, meaning that the temptation to abandon results in favor of process will always exist. In combat sports, competition presents a way to keep yourself and your gym in check. But in other arts, a process-oriented approach is often the default way of learning. And a lot of those arts are more traditional than combat sports.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
adherence to tradition is just one of the natural conclusions of a process-oriented mentality. However, process-oriented and results-oriented is really the terminology that we should be using. While not every art is going to perfectly fit into these categories, the division is at least much cleaner than the terms we're currently using. Thinking about arts in terms of process versus results is a more accurate way to portray the intended meaning. And being cognizant of the different approaches that martial arts take can help to teach us more about martial arts, fighting, and our own approaches to problems. So, I guess the moral of the story is that learning about organizational culture somehow helped me learn about fighting.
That's the beauty of martial arts, man. If you practice a martial art and you don't follow like a fantasy-based martial art, then you will always learn something for your personal life. And that's the beauty of it. So I think you have some really good points here, and I hope you could understand also my side. And I love to see more about you because you really have some good thoughts, some good train of thoughts that really also helps me, and I hope helped also you. And the original video will always be in the description below. Make sure also to go over to Armchair Valence's channel and hit those likes, hit the subscribe button also on his channel, because he does a fantastic job, man. He really does. And I thank you so much for being in one of my videos where we talked about the worst and the best advice that martial arts influencers can give you. You can watch this video here. Let's see you in that one.